families. They're going to...
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, we want to welcome now Colin Reed of America Rising. His entire job is to take down Hillary Clinton, essentially. Colin.
That's right. Hey, guys.
Hey. Good morning. One YouTube clip at a time, right?
That's right. That's the idea.
So, really interesting this morning, the fact that she absolutely refused to answer that question. Does that give you some indication that she might be looking to potentially endorse Hillary Clinton when she has that sort of refusal? Here's somebody that's supposed to be so tough on banks, and yet she's not willing to ask Hillary Clinton to release her transcripts with the speeches that she has conducted for banks where she's made upwards of $300,000 per speech.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, and it's become a problem for Senator Warren as she's doing these interviews. That's 3 times in the last week that she's been asked about her endorsement of Hillary Clinton, and 3 times she hasn't answered. And it came up within the context of that question, but I would argue that the Goldman transcripts that Secretary Clinton refuses to release is a huge problem for Senator Warren and other Democratic primary voters who have this anti-Wall Street, anti-capitalism, anti-free enterprise view. I mean, if you look at some of the exit polls from the early states, there are large swaths of the Democratic Party who identify positively with the term socialism. And folks like that are not going to be pleased to learn that Secretary Clinton gave these high-profile speeches behind closed doors for which she was paid up to $250,000 a pop. So it's a huge problem for all parties involved, which is why I find the clip so interesting and why the problem it continues to linger.
I mean, my feeling is this. Listen, she's a savvy politician. I guess you need to pick your battles, obviously. Clearly, she doesn't want to undercut who she knows is going to be the Democratic nominee. On the other hand, this is a woman who ran on speaking truth to power, on not being afraid to go up against Democrats and or Republicans if she thinks they're doing the wrong thing. And the fact that she is basically muzzling herself in this instance goes against sort of what she ran on. And really, I mean, it's not unusual. It happens on both sides of the aisle, but all these people who love and are devoted to Elizabeth Warren because she's a breath of fresh air in Washington, I would say would be or should be disappointed in this very Washingtonian or whatever method of just not saying anything, refusing to answer questions with something that you can tell she doesn't like.
Well, right, and if you look at the sway she has amongst the grassroots and the folks in the Democratic primary who are voting, Secretary Clinton won Massachusetts barely by 20,000 votes, or something close to that. You don't think that if Elizabeth Warren had thrown her support to Senator Sanders in the weeks up to the primary, could have made a difference in that primary, could have been a big deal if Senator Sanders were able to win Massachusetts. But you're right, Hillary. If Senator Warren decides to support Secretary Clinton, she risks undermining her entire anti-Wall Street message. Because if you're going to if you're a Democratic primary voter assessing these two candidates solely on the issue of Wall Street, which is where Elizabeth Warren has centered much of her messaging, then you're going to choose Senator Sanders. He has not given these high-profile speeches to these banks that Secretary Clinton has. It's pretty cut and dry.
Do you think there's any possibility that she really wants to be vice president? I mean, that's something that was circling around last week.
I don't know. I honestly do not know. I just know that of all she is the one kind of high-profile endorsement that remains unaccounted for. And like with anything else in politics, the longer you let these things linger and fester, the bigger of a problem it becomes. But it would have been more of a profile and courage to make her voice known, or her ahead of the Massachusetts primary, where she does have, it's her home state, and she obviously has enormous sway amongst the grassroots voters in the Democratic primary. So, I think it gets to a number of huge problems that the party has. The party is moving very far to the left. She represents, Senator Warren represents the Warren wing of the Democratic Party. We used to call it the Howard Dean wing of the Democratic Party. And I think it's the reason that so many of these voters don't trust Secretary Clinton, because her views are more in the middle on some of these issues involving financial institutions. So it's a problem. And, the more interviews she does, each time it comes up, it's just like Secretary Clinton's Wall Street speeches, because she refuses to release them, and because it becomes the stonewalling, builds up. Eventually, you have to, relieve the pressure somehow.
I mean, I'll say this, just because you end up getting behind somebody, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them on every single issue. So, there's that to take into account. But I do think...
Why can't she say that then? It's like, it's similar that people that support Donald Trump, Scott Brown yesterday was on our air, and he said, listen, I don't support all things Donald Trump. When he's rude about Megyn Kelly, I don't support that. I mean, you can support a candidate and not agree with every last view, and the fact that she's refusing to weigh in on this, I find that to be problematic.
I mean, I think the same reason Charlie Baker, for whatever reason, isn't endorsing somebody else. I mean, he could, but he doesn't. I want to point out, certainly, that just because Hillary Clinton does something that you can tell Elizabeth Warren isn't into doesn't mean that she's immediately spurting all those anti-Wall Street people. I'm sure she's going to maintain her anti-Wall Street stance. But I would say that it's frustrating, certainly, to watch politicians who you know where they would probably stand, avoiding to address something. It's annoying, and I'm just as angry at Charlie Baker about it, because you know what? You know where they are, and why don't they have the courage to say so? Why doesn't Elizabeth Warren have the courage to say, you know what? I don't agree with Hillary Clinton doing this. I think she should release these transcripts. It seems cowardly coming from a woman who has built her reputation on speaking truth to power, on being unafraid to take on the Washington insiders. Hillary Clinton is a classic Washington insider. Why isn't she, taking her on? So,
especially on this one issue, it's not like it's just any old issue. This is not only Elizabeth Warren's core issue, but I would argue it's one of the core issues that is dividing Democratic primary voters as they go to make up their minds when they go to vote. So this is a big issue for both of them, and the fact that Elizabeth Warren is playing so coy with her endorsement indicates to me that she knows it's going to be a problem for her if she does it. And this is also the reason that even Democratic primary voters have a problem with Hillary Clinton on issues of honesty and trust. She runs as this populist anti-Wall Street crusader now, but a few years ago she was giving speeches to the tune of $675,000 behind closed doors, and no one has been able to figure out what was said because she won't release the transcripts. So there's problems all around.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Colin, the takeaway definitely is it smells fishy. Why? People who love Elizabeth Warren and who are in the so-called Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party can't walk away from this and be anything but suspicious as to why she's not embracing Hillary Clinton more fully. You'd think it would give them a lot of pause, and for sure, I mean, we don't have whatever proof, but I mean, you can pretty much guess that those people are going to be with Bernie, and you have to wonder, once, of course, Bernie probably steps out of the race, is it going to be hard for them to turn around and embrace Hillary if Elizabeth Warren just refused to do so during the primary?
Absolutely. And it's funny that a lot of these Democrats who were all about transparency when it came to Governor Romney's taxes a few years ago have gone quiet when it comes to Secretary Clinton's issues of her Wall Street speeches.
Colin Reed, one of our listeners, this is what he has to say. Vincent said, I have believed for some time that Senator Warren is remaining in the background because if Hillary has to leave the election because of the FBI investigation, Warren may be called upon to become the Democratic nominee. What do you think about that idea?
Well, that's an interesting theory. I hadn't actually thought of that, but I do think that the FBI, as long as there is this specter of a looming FBI investigation looming over a campaign, you are in somewhat of a tenuous spot because your fate is ultimately in the hands of somebody else, and that's never where you want to be as a politician. Only the FBI and the Department of Justice knows what's going on with the investigation into Secretary Clinton's email server. Stories continue to come out about various IT servers pleading immunity and taking the fifth, and it's not a good thing for her to place to be in. And it's been more than a year since this story first broke. It broke in early March of 2015, and the fact that we're still talking about it in March of 2016, I think indicates what a big problem this is politically. And I think it's one of the driving factors that these honest and trustworthy numbers are so bad for Secretary Clinton. Even in these states that she won the other day on Tuesday, Tuesday, she got crushed amongst voters who are looking for those or value those two issues of honesty and trust. So it's a big lingering problem for her. The email server represents a part of that. There are other issues like the Wall Street speeches and like the willingness to say or do anything to get elected, regardless of past record and rhetoric. So honesty and trust is going to be an issue that's going to remain with her the remaining 7-8 months.
Colin Reed, really appreciate your time. He's, of course, with America Rising, a PAC set up in 2013. As stated on the website, is serving as an organization on the right for the sole purpose of exposing the truth about Democrats through video tracking, research, and communications. Colin Reed, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having us, guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. So one thing, actually, when I worked in TV news, you were not allowed to say Happy St. Patty's Day. We know this, right?
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yes.
But I do know. One of my editors yelled at me for saying paddy wagon, so there you go.
Yeah, you can't